What happens when you stop playing it safe and create the music that scares you?
I kind of got to the point that I was like, I don't feel like I can release any more music until I finish this. I kind of want to just finish telling this story. And it wasn't even for other people, it was for myself.
For Sippy, creating Scars in Stereo meant betting her career on vulnerability.
None of it was a business decision. None of it probably even made sense in where I was in my career.
She'd built a loyal fan base on lighthearted club bangers, and now she was about to show them something completely different.
You were concerned, how am I going to be perceived? Will my fans still ride with me?
And when it came time to play these deeply personal songs live, the fear was real.
The second I press play, I'm so nervous. I'm oh my gosh, I don't want to look at everyone while I play this.
But what happened next changed everything.
But as I started playing these songs and looking in the crowd, I noticed how much people were singing every word.
The risk paid off because sometimes your deepest truth is exactly what your fans need to hear. This is Sippy on Elevated Frequencies.
Ever wonder how top DJs actually built their careers?
I had to do 15 years of hard work to get any of the recognition that I wanted.
Where I saw a turning point in my career is when I became true to myself.
From marketing and mindset to networking and negotiation, I'm giving you the tools you need to build a lasting career in dance music.
Give them bits of you and your everyday life.
You have to change the way you view the word no. Like me, I'm encouraged by it.
Join me, Olivia Mancuso, and industry leaders as we reveal what it really takes to turn your passion into profit. This is Elevated Frequencies. This episode is sponsored by Laylo, where culture drops first. Laylo is the drop platform and CRM used by artists and promoters like Fisher, Chris Lake, James Hype, Mochak, Weathen, and tech support to create hype around big moments and build a direct line to fans. With Laylo, you can capture phone numbers from social media and message your biggest supporters when tickets or merch go live, plus reward them with exclusives. It works across SMS, email, WhatsApp, and Instagram DMs with integrations like Shopify and Spotify, voicemail hotlines, and a complete tour suite when you're ready to hit the road. Laylo makes it easy and affordable for DJs to drop in your style and build a fandom that lasts. Use the link in our show notes for 15,000 free messaging credits with code Olivia15. You came in today on a train.
Yes.
You took my advice, took the train, which was
Yes.
adventurous. Then you showed up here on a Lime scooter, which is insane.
Honestly,
You're the
just
only
make it
person-
happen. Just make it.
I know, which thank you so much for making
yeah.
this. I mean, you literally took multiple modes of transportation.
I was talking to my sister actually today while I was on the train, and she was like, "Oh, where are you now?" Because I'd spoken to her just before, and I was on my flight, and she was like, "Oh, where are you now? Are you on a flight or are you on a bus?" And I'm like, "I'm on a train." So I realized that this, while I've been traveling over this period, I have been on obviously in cars and Ubers and all that. I was on a bus, a bus tour bus. I was on obviously commercial flights. I was on a private jet. I was on it was like a rent. It wasn't someone who owned it. It was a private company. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So then I was on that. Then I had the train. I literally, there's not much left.
No.
Oh, and a Lime scooter.
and a Lime scooter. You just need a boat, you need a rowboat to get to your next
literally.
gig.
Yeah.
You have been nonstop touring since I first met you, which was late last summer.
Yeah.
July, August.
Yeah.
Is your album tour officially done, or are you still in the thick of that?
So technically, I think tomorrow is my last one for that tour. Oh, actually, no. I think next weekend is the last weekend of it. Because it kind of had phase one, and then we added more shows at the end, and then I think it's done.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So when we met, you were just getting ready to launch Scars in Stereo.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's kind of set the stage.
Mm-hmm.
Tell everybody what this album was and why it was different from what you have been doing.
So, I don't know. I'm obviously bass music, dubstep producer, kind of, even though I have a lot of dubstep, it's also a little bit, I kind of jump around everywhere, a bit of bass house, bit of drum and bass, bit of whatever. Everything has always been kind of fairly lighthearted, or like even, a bit of a meme. Like I definitely make songs that I'm like, this is just like a bit of fun and nothing too serious. And then Scars and Stereo, this album, was a bit more like the music. I definitely had some more like moody music. Naturally, I actually write a lot more moody music, but just didn't really feel like it fit because I was very focused on like clubs and like, that kind of clubbing music. And it felt a little bit more like headphones, sit by yourself, sit in the car and listen to kind of music. So I had put a couple of those out before, but, I had more and more that I was writing, and I kind of was like, and I was just holding on to them, and I held on to quite a few, and then I got to a point where I was like, okay, what am I releasing next? I was like, I feel like I don't have any music to release. But then I like looked at all that music and I was like, well, I have like a whole album of this music almost, So then I started to be like, okay, like, is it time to put it out, and am I writing an album? And I just kind of had a moment where I was like, you know what, like, so I was like, I want to finish, because I had a few songs here and there that I'd written over a period of a few years. And it was mostly just about like how I was feeling at the time. It was more for me than anything else. It was kind of like moments where I was depressed, moments where I was really anxious, moments where things really frustrated me. I had all these moments, and it was all, like, I'm going to be honest, like a lot of it was pretty heavy. And so I just kind of held on to them because I just wrote them for my own, for my own peace and my own creativity. But then I didn't really want to release them. So, or not want to release them, but just didn't feel right. And then when I kind of saw them all together, I was like, oh, this is a whole album. So I kind of got to the point that I was like, I don't feel like I can release any more music until I like finish this. Like I kind of want to just like finish telling this story. And it wasn't even for other people. It was like for myself. It's like I want to close this chapter and like move on. So, I was like, okay, I'm writing an album, and none of it was a business decision. None of it probably even made sense in where I was in my career, or, what makes sense to release as someone, at my sort of stage in my career and all of that. But it, turned out to be the best thing that I could have done.
Yeah, you have this amazing like spoken word intro to it that I told you, I was like, this gives me Eminem vibes. Like when you which like I meant
Which
as
is
a compliment.
so funny because I'm like, no, I just say that because I'm like, I think he's incredible.
Yeah.
And I'm not like a rapper or anything. So like hearing you say that, I'm like, I love that.
Yeah, it was because it was filled with so much emotion and it was so powerful. It kind of made me stop, and I was like, whoa, you know? And even my husband, like in the other room, he's like, what is that? Like, that sounds so cool. I'm like, I was like, come check this out. And it really tied the whole body of work together.
Yeah. And that was one of the last things that I did. And it was very much like so the actual piece of music I wrote, I think in like 2018, like so long ago. And I knew I was like, I just want to hold on to this because I'll eventually turn it into like a releasable track. And then, it kind of came back in. I still like loved it. And eventually I was like, oh, hang on a minute. Like this is the intro. And I knew like straight away, I was like, I want this to be spoken word, and I'm going to do it. And then I kind of like tried to explain it to a few people, and they're a bit like this, like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm not even like going to tell people about it because I'm like, I know what I need it to be for myself. So I'm just going to go off and do it. And it was one of the last things I did. I think it was like the second last thing I did. And I was in Australia, and I just like locked myself in a room and just like journaled about, and I don't think it would have been the same if I had done it earlier because the whole feeling of the whole album was really fresh to me. And I was kind of going back to like, some of the songs were like newer experiences. Some of the songs were from older experiences, but because I just like pretty much almost finished the whole album, it was all very like fresh to me. So then I like sat down, literally like, shut all the blinds, got myself in this like little dark room and just had the music playing and was just journaling like about all of it. And I think like, I don't know, it took me like From the journaling, it turned into the actual song so quick. Like it was almost like the journal was coming out as it was meant to be said. And I really only changed like a few things. And it was probably one of the early takes that I ended up using because it just was, I was still so like emotional from writing it. And even some of the lyrics I changed. I think I told you that before. So there's a lyric that says, you know, now I'm spiraling and I miss my mum. And the original lyrics was like, I don't even think it was now I'm spiraling. It was something and then it said, and I miss my loved ones. But it was very like well put together. But as I was like saying it, even the now I'm spiraling, I kind of like lost my place and then just like yelled out like, I miss my mum. And then I was like,
that's the part that gave me goosebumps both times. It was so intense. Yeah. It was so incredible.
It was very cathartic to write. I was like, oh, like I feel like a weight lifted off.
I bet.
Yeah, and it wasn't until like I actually had to like submit it because I didn't think about how it would be perceived really. You know, I just kind of did it. And then I was like, not only am I putting it out, but it's the first song. Like this is the first impression of the album. And that's when I was like, holy shit. And then I was just like, okay, just don't think about it. Just put it out. Like, just put it out there. Like, you know.
Yeah. Well, that was a big thing for you because this was such a different avenue.
Yeah.
Putting together this body of work, sharing it with people. It's a lot more emotional. The songs had meaning. Not to say your others didn't, but they were more fun, lighthearted. You were concerned, like, how am I going to be perceived? Will my fans still ride with me? And it really seems like they did. But I want to hear it from you now that you're kind of at the tail end of this tour. Yeah. What was the reception like for those ride or die fans that like show up in the fuzzy bunny masks and like are expected to, you know, you to just like party with them? What was their response?
Honestly, it was really interesting because I feel like there was such a buzz even before it came out in terms of like my true fans are just really there. They're so invested, which is awesome. I think they see a lot more because they're watching my stories. They're kind of really, I don't know, just like plugged into it all. But there were kind of like two sides of it because on the one side, like in terms of the shows, like the shows went really well. Like I haven't gone off and done this, and I don't really know if I want to because I don't really like focusing, or not focusing on this stuff, but like comparing too much. But most of the shows on the tour sold out, which was amazing. And I think from a live perspective, there were so many people that are just so in it, very much like in terms of just what I'm doing. They're very in it. They very much enjoyed my sets and all of that sort of stuff. That's just on the like more professional, seeing the growth side, just seeing like the size of rooms that I'm playing that are getting bigger and like the amount of people that are coming to shows, you know, and how invested they are in terms of like merch and also like my brand. I kind of left it a little bit open so that obviously like I have merch and it's awesome that people support me and that people buy that and wear that. But there's also a lot of other things that people wear to like express themselves that are very like Sippy coded but not necessarily merch. And it was really cool to see people like very much like run with that and do that as well. So that's like on the one side of just seeing the growth. But then the other side of it was seeing like how people really connected with the music. I got really self-conscious to kind of play it in sets because it's obviously like a lot. It wasn't necessarily written, or some of them were written for like a live setting, but not all of it. So it was kind of like nerve-wracking for me to play it live. And seeing the thing that was crazy was like I'd always go to play a song from the album and get really like, the second I press play, I'm like so nervous. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to look at everyone while I play this because I just had this feeling of like it's not, you know, like light and all that sort of stuff. But as I started like playing these songs like and looking in the crowd, I noticed how much like people were singing every word. Some people were like also just like having a moment to themselves and just it was awesome to see how people connected with it, you know? And even though, yes, we are in a live setting and we're having fun and we're being goofballs and all that, it was cool to also like take a few moments through that hour and a half to like have that music and watch people's, you know, kind of reaction to it, especially if they didn't really notice that I was watching them, which sounds like really weird, but like they're so in the moment. And it was nice for me to kind of see that from a way that felt, because it is a bit like, it makes you feel a little bit insecure because you're like, these are my deepest, feelings,
For sure.
and then you're like, oh, I have to watch like someone else react to that. But, when you're seeing them in a way that feels slightly removed, it's quite nice. But seeing how much people were like really like, knowing every word, really also just like meeting people after my shows and them telling me like, I've been having a really hard time and this song has been on repeat and it's just really helped me get through these feelings, like that's obviously how it is for me listening to other music, and also the way I wrote it was for that very reason. So it was really awesome to see it like deeply connect with people. And I think it sort of helped me to, I don't know, it helped me get closer to my fan base, and it allowed them to see that deeper level of me that was always obviously there. It's just like hard sometimes for me to portray it in any other way than if we're, kind of sitting next to each other having a chat.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So for the artists who listen to this show and like are maybe a little bit earlier on their journey, I get this question a lot of like, well, do I need to stick to one sound, one theme, one genre, whatever? When can I switch it up? I don't think there's one right formula necessarily, but what were the indications in your mind that were like, okay, I've built enough trust that now I can take a pivot and it's still a risk, but it feels a little less risky.
Yeah, I think I've always stayed very like open with the music that I create and the music that I play. I think because in my sets, I was showing a lot of people that I'm very, I was throwing a lot at people in my sets in terms of variety. And I think seeing how people react to that and the fact that more people were coming to my sets and people were really enjoying it, that obviously gave me some comfort of like, okay, they know like that if they're coming to a Sippy set that it's not going to be the same for an hour and a half, like I'm going to give them a bit of a surprise here or there, as in terms of like genre and where we're going and something a little bit different that maybe they wouldn't normally hear in like a bass music set or something like that. So seeing the way they react to that obviously made me be like, okay, they're open-minded. I had released a few songs in the past that were not, sort of like heavy club bangers, and I feel like there was not, even though it felt different for me because I'm not necessarily playing them as much in sets, seeing the way that people reacted to them online, it definitely had a similar, it was a comparable listenership to the heavy stuff, Yeah. And that definitely like gave me the confidence, but also like, and this is like a whole thing that I could go so deep into, but it was also a bit of like me reconnecting with my artistry, and also like I had a long period of time where I was really not sort of not connected to what I was doing, but I wasn't, I was doing a lot of things out of fear, and I really so badly wanted to like be successful, whatever that means. And it kind of got me into a place where I wasn't listening to what I had to, like I used to be so in touch with like what felt right for my journey and artistry and all of that sort of stuff. And I really lost sight of that for a while. And then I had, reconnected to it again. And that's what kind of made me be like, I almost felt like, not I didn't have a choice, but like in my head I was like, this is the next thing. Like I have to do this for me. And if I do this and they really hate it, well, it was more about me cultivating a fan base that love that and that love what I do and are okay with me being a silly goose, and also okay with me sharing, like my deep feelings and things like that.
That's got to be one of the most validating things, because you see it all the time. Like people will say, oh, so-and-so fell off, or so-and-so, whatever. Anytime they kind of like veer into territory that's unfamiliar to the fan. Yeah. And so it just really proves that you have like those true fans that are willing to ride with you through iterations of your career. And that's what I always preach. It's like when you're building your brand And your brand just really means who you are and finding a way to communicate who you are in a digestible way. It doesn't mean putting on airs or changing yourself.
Yeah.
Like that's what you need to go for. Not scattershot gaining as many fans as possible. It's the ones who are going to be there.
Yeah.
Because we're humans, we're malleable and we change.
Yeah. And I think that is sometimes the biggest problem for people because, well, artists, they do things because they're like, okay, this gets me more bookings or it's the quicker way or I can get, some quick followers and fans and all the rest. And it works for the first 2 years, 3 years, but then they then get stuck in a spot and growing from there is really tough or maintaining from there is really tough. And you see it with people, whether it's a music side of thing or whether it's a branding and social media side of thing. Like I see it a lot with these people who do it with social media and you see them being like, oh, this is kind of like the quick like and the quick grab.
Yeah.
Which, look, don't get me wrong, like there's use for that as well. But they jump, they're kind of like, okay, this is like great, and then they get to a point where they're literally, it looks so anxiety inducing because they're chasing that kind of thing that they've kind of blown up for, but it doesn't have the longevity.
Yeah.
And I think it takes a lot to, kind of do it in a way that's maintainable. And I think some of the most successful or, some of the biggest names that at least I aspire to be like are the ones that it's been maybe a longer journey, but one that like doesn't disappear in, a year or two, they can keep creating and keep being true to themselves. And if anything, it continues to get easier for them because they're, more sure of themselves and have built a fan base that are, open to their own creativity.
Yeah. Yeah. Whenever I see a profile and it's like, it's obvious that all of their content is just like a play at trying to go viral. It's like, ugh. It's like, do you not have any personality? Like that's what I assume.
And that's
it's
usually
like,
what it is.
Yeah, it's really like those people do not have actual personalities. They're like chronically online.
Yeah.
Like it's just so fleeting. Like virality doesn't fill shows. It's never a guarantee. Like, that essay that I referred to earlier, 1,000 True Fans, like talks about that. And if you can build 1,000 true fans that will, his name is Kevin Kelly. He wrote this essay and he's like, if you can get 1,000 people to give you a day's wages, let's say $100 a year, that's a sustainable income. Going viral, that's never like, that's not going to sell your merch. They're not going to buy your tickets.
Yeah.
But it's just a trap that so many people fall in.
Yeah. And I do see some of those people too. Like say, for example, like there might be some artists that are bigger than me, but when I look at sort of the things they have to do to keep up with it, I'm like, it's more sustainable and, for me to be at this point doing it the way I'm doing it than, like being there trying to chase it. The amount of money, energy, and just like, I don't know, soul that kind of gets taken in order to keep up with that. It's kind of like, is it all really worth it in the end? So,
and I think that's an equation every artist, every person has to determine for themselves, like what is sustainable and what do you want out of life outside of touring and being an artist. Because like you have your whole family in Australia.
Yes.
And you spend a considerable amount of time there. Well, at least in the past year you were there because your sister had a baby who's like the cutest baby I've ever seen. It's ridiculous.
She is a very cute baby.
You posted that on social. I always get excited when I see her in your stories. But like those are, I'm assuming, important factors to you when you're deciding like, how often am I going to tour? What's my life going to look like outside of this?
And look, I will say like at the moment, and I don't know if it's, I don't know, it does have a little bit to do with like the way the world is as well. But, I'm traveling a lot, I'm touring a lot, but I am getting better at prioritizing time off. But I'm also like focusing on trying to be in the moment as much as I can, no matter where I am. So even if I'm traveling, like even today I caught the train and I was sitting on the train and just kind of like people watching and seeing the sunset. And I was like, I'm in Chicago and this is like, just trying to like be in the moment as much as I can because, I was going through a period where I'm like, I'm grinding and I'm like, I'm playing shows and I'm doing this and all that sort of stuff. And I feel like I wasn't enjoying it because I was just so like head down and trying so hard and all this sort of stuff. And I got to a point where I'm like, well, what's the point if you're not really there enjoying it,
right.
And don't get me wrong, like you can't love it every single day, but you also need to see, like obviously everyone has an end goal in mind, but the end goal will always move, it will continue moving. As soon as you get there, you're already focusing on the next thing. Yeah. So kind of focusing on enjoying it and prioritizing, how you want your life to look is, I don't know, I think it's super important.
Yeah, I think that gets lost a lot. This is like a dream career for so many people. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people, like, because it can get so overwhelming and taxing mentally, physically, all the touring, like the alternative is what? Going to work in an office where you hate your life and someone else rules your time and whatever. Yeah. That's the perspective I try to keep. Like, I had one of those weeks where it was like just all my meetings were kind of at random times. I never really had like enough time to get in the flow state with anything. Yeah. And like, it was just like I had an annoying week. Yeah. And I was like, hold on, I'm living like a dream. Like I get to work for myself and, and I also have the power to like do things differently. Yeah. So I need to quit my and just like, you know what I mean? Like I had my own little like moment today where I was like, I need to practice what I preach. Like my week was this way because I made it that way. Yeah. So
it's sometimes it's a little hard for me because I will say, and it's a bit of a generalization, but I think, it has a lot of weight. A lot of Aussies have a very like high quality of life and their day-to-day life is like pretty awesome. And so sometimes like I understand, like it's a little bit different in every context, I guess. But like say for example in Australia, like, I still have all my friends over there, all my best friends, like a lot of them have 9-to-5s or somewhat standard jobs. And a lot of them are very happy with that. So it is, on the one hand, it's like, obviously there's plenty of people that don't love their jobs, but I know they're like, say for example, one of my friends just went there and she was like, oh, like everyone's out at the beach at like 7 a.m. in the morning. I'm like, yeah, like, a lot of people go to the beach before they go to work, and having that sort of lifestyle for a lot of Aussies sometimes makes it a little less appealing to like kind of go out and be like, oh my gosh, like life is crazy and all that sort of stuff. But in saying that, like, I think there's a bit of a bell curve to it because, when you're just starting out and you're trying to like just get there, wherever there is, but you're trying to establish yourself, there's so much work, there's so little support, there is no money and it's so exhausting, so you're in this point where you're like, you want to be so grateful for it, but you're exhausted and you're trying so hard and you're not getting any recognition. And you feel like you're trying everything and the world is against you. And like I definitely had a lot of moments then when I was like, I could just be sitting somewhere being told what to do, getting the same income every week and knowing that I can pay my bills and all that sort of stuff. And it's really hard because I know a lot of people don't get through that point. Once you start, there's definitely tipping points where once you get through a certain, for me, it was really just like, can I pay my rent? And once I got to that point, it became so much more like, this is awesome. Like, like I am living the dream. And even if I am tired, and again, we have times where you're not as grateful for it, but you have those moments where you're like, I'm literally living the dream. Like, where am I? I'm on stage, or I'm, in a writing session here, or I'm flying here, or even the moments where I get like a day or two off and you're like, oh, I'm in Europe, with, my cousin and my friend, and we're, walking around Tomorrowland because I'm playing this festival, or, those moments. And I think like it is really tough because a lot of the people starting out, you are working so hard and you're not really getting anything for it. But
that's where a lot of people quit.
Exactly.
That's the thing. You have to push through. Like, if you can push through that, you're almost guaranteed to find success on the other side because and so few people do it.
Exactly. And the success might look a little different than you thought, you know. It might not necessarily be how you first envisioned it, but yeah, if you push through it, like, you'll get there and be creative with it. You know, some people are like, unless it looks this way, then, you know, like I know a lot of people, especially like when they're a bit younger and less established even in their life, they're like, well, I have to like live out of home and do this and do that and da, da, da. And then I'm like, okay, then you've got to get second and third jobs. I'm not saying, obviously you can still do it that way, but there are some people who, you know, they're so young and they can still be living at home. And I'm like, you're trying to make it as an artist, which is so expensive, so taxing, and your home life is great. You get on with your parents so well. I'm like, stay there an extra year if you can, you know, like
for sure,
whatever helps, you know. And that's people, I notice that maybe it's like a cultural thing here in America. People are like a bit ashamed to be like, oh, well, I live with my parents. I'm like, do it. Like, that's great, you know, like that's.
Is that in Australia? Do people?
We stay with our parents for ages.
See, that's so. I realize I have immigrant. My father's an immigrant from Sicily, and it's the same. Yeah. They all live like in the same building, like generations. Like they have different floors of a flat, whatever. Yeah. But I do realize that when it comes to business, and it's because when my content starts reaching international crowds, like, oh, this is so American. I'm like, I am. I have that hustle culture, like grind till you die, like mindset. But like, unfortunately, that is what has been instilled in us. Yeah. And now I don't know any other way.
With an immigrant parent, I feel like it's even more so because it's like.
Yes, because he was like, you got a B, why didn't you get an A? You know, so and he's an entrepreneur too. Like, he made it. So that was my inspiration. But like, now I don't know. Have you assimilated to like American culture in any way? When did you move to LA?
I kind of briefly moved January 2020, but obviously COVID,
you
know, flipped it upside down. Yeah, but it was June 2021. So it's coming up on 5 years. No, I wouldn't say it. Like, it's not that I'm not meaning to. It's just like, I feel like visiting here versus living here is so different. Yeah. Every city is so culturally different too. So I feel like I'm understanding it deeper and deeper. I wouldn't say that I'm not assimilating. It's not that I'm not trying to or anything. It's just sort of understanding and learning things. I'm definitely getting a deeper understanding for like American culture.
What was the biggest culture shock?
That when you say thank you, people go, That was the big.
What else are you supposed to say?
Like, you're welcome. Okay. Like, I always felt like someone was mad at me.
That's so funny.
No, probably, I think the biggest culture shock, there was probably a few. And like, I moved to LA, so, you know, that has its own culture in itself, you know. But I think the biggest thing, I don't know, like, there's probably two different things. And I'm going to say them both because one's a negative and one's a positive. And I don't, you know, I don't love like going crazy negative on things, but, you know, it was something to point out. I think like when I first moved, I noticed how much like, I guess like fear and again, I was living in LA very much in the thick of it, how much like fear and agitation there was and a bit of like, I got to look after myself because no one else is going to look after me, which there's respect in that because, you know, you do. I come from Australia and again, overgeneralization depends where you live and all that, but it's a very different feeling. It's like if I fell over on the street, I know someone would come help me.
This is such a hyper-individualistic country.
Yeah, and I didn't understand it at first. Now I understand why it's like that. So it has a bit of a different feeling for me now than when I first got here. Now I have a deeper understanding of why it's like that. Whereas when I first came over, I was like, oh my God, no one gives a about each other and all this sort of stuff. Now I'm a bit more like, okay, I understand where it comes from and why and all of that sort of stuff. So I think that was a bit of a culture shock for me at the start. And then the other thing was just like how, and this is like, I guess more the positive side of things is like how big America is. Like, it is the amount of people, like, even size-wise, like, Australia is almost as big as America. Not quite, but it's almost as big. But the amount of people in America is crazy.
Because in Australia, you just all live in one little part of it.
We all live just on the beaches. And
right,
then,
and then the inside is
nothing's-
just
Yeah, like a
wild.
few people on the inside.
Yeah, like wilderness.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, you know, bush and wilderness and like Australian desert and things like that. But I think like seeing how many people here, how big it is and how much opportunity there is here. Like you can be doing the most niche thing like and only have like 1% of that market and you can have like a long, successful, lucrative career even if you've just got this like one tiny dot in the market, you know? And I think, again, like that's where America can be like the land of opportunity. You know, I think a lot of people get bogged down in how tough things are. And don't get me wrong, things are tough and can be tough and all of that. But there's so many opportunities that that are here, that present themselves here that you can't get in other places around the world. You know, there's so many things that I've done here or I've experienced here or even seen here that I'm like, this just wouldn't exist and can't exist in Australia, for example.
Well, I think that's like just proof that they're like things themselves are neutral and they always have a positive and negative to it. There's some, you know, the opportunity or like what you just described isn't inherently good or bad, but it comes with both sides.
And it even goes into that kind of cultural side of things too, because culturally there's so many different microcultures within, not only within America, but within each city. You know, you can find your people and your niche and your thing, you know, somewhere here. You know, you might have to travel a little bit to find it sometimes, but like there is so many people that you can find people that are into and interested in what you are as well.
Which I think is like tying it back in and wrapping a bow on this with the branding thing. Mm-hmm. Artists who are like trying to be for everybody, let me just make viral content. Why do that when there's probably a whole group of people out there who are into the same weird shit you are?
Yeah.
And not saying anime is weird, but that's the first thing that came to mind. What if it's anime and house music? What if it's plants and bass? You know what I'm saying? Like there's so many opportunities to find a community. Mm-hmm. And well, I could talk to you about this forever, but we do have a reservation to make.
We do. Yeah, I know. I wish I got here earlier, but
well, you came in on a Lime scooter, which I'm so like. I think you definitely are the only person who's ever done that. So it was
throttle down the whole time. I was just like, I'm in Chicago. I can just like
incredible.
Yell that I'm coming, and people will just
amazing.
Dodge out of the way, I guess.
Yeah, I got to make you like an award for that. You can put with the rest of your fan like memorabilia.
Yeah, 100%.
For taking a Lime scooter.
I couldn't take any videos while I was on there, but it happened.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
You saw me, so
I did. Thank you.
Thank you so much.